Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this episode of Opening Basics. I did a video recently in the Opening Basics series, number 24, which was on the gambit and the Scotch gambit. And since I did that video, a couple of things have happened that caused me to want to revisit that line, the Scotch gambit. So if you're interested in the background of this video, then you can go to that previous one, Opening Basics number 24, and the part on the Scotch gambit starts at about 13 minutes and 30 seconds into the video. So go to 13:30 and just watch from there, and you'll skip over the introduction and the discussion of the gambit. So the things that have happened since I made that is I've played that in a couple of over-the-board games and learned a couple of things. And the second thing that happened that really triggered this video is that Chess Explained encountered the Scotch gambit in one of his blitz games, and he was white. I mean, he was black, and his opponent played the Scotch gambit, and he really crucified that opening. He called it completely unplayable and garbage and things like that. And so I don't want to be in the position of recommending garbage openings, because I thought, and when I made the video and subsequently played it, that it was actually a playable opening. And so to be clear, I'm not claiming that it's an opening that has an advantage for white. What I'm claiming is that it's an opening that white can play to get an interesting position and with equal chances. So basically you're giving up the opening advantage, but you get some interesting lines and some tactics. So I think it's playable in that sense. Whereas Chess Explained seemed to imply that it was completely unplayable and that white was just in a terrible position after playing the Scotch gambit. So I wanted to investigate that. I mean, if he's true, then I will take back my recommendation and probably stop playing it myself. But well, we'll see. So let's put the position on the board: e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. So we've got typical king's pawn opening, and then d4 is the Scotch game. E takes d4 is almost the only move there, and then the normal Scotch game continues with knight takes, but the Scotch gambit is the immediate bishop to c4. And now what Chess Explained played, and also what was played in both of the games where I tried this in over-the-board games, was the move bishop to c5. And actually in my video, I mainly looked at the move knight to f6, because the move bishop to c5 transposes often into lines of the Italian game. And that's what happened in both of my games. But, well, I thought since this is the main response, I should probably include this. So there's two ways that white can respond here. You can continue in gambit style with c3. It's an interesting way to play. And the way I play, it's a little bit safer, is castling. And this is also the way that Chess Explained's opponent, M. Harvey, played. So we'll just take a look at this line. And then Chess Explained followed up with d6. But first of all, I want to show what happened in my games. Both of my opponents played the move knight to f6. Cancel that, knight f6. So this is transposing into the Max Lang attack. And so that's why I didn't really cover it in the Scotch gambit video, because I had covered the Max Lang attack previously when I did videos on the Italian game in my Opening Basics series, so I didn't want to repeat myself. But since this arises from the Scotch gambit, and I just did that recently, let's take a look at this, and we'll go into more detail. We'll go a little deeper than I did when I was talking about the Max Lang attack. So e5 is the main move here. You're going to kick this knight, make it a little bit uncomfortable. You're down a pawn at this point. You have to play vigorously, and you want to try and displace black's pieces. Now black can play something like knight to g4. This is probably not the best. You can just develop with bishop to f4, hold on to that pawn, and maybe kick this knight later, and you should get decent play. So the main move here is the counter-attacking move, d5. So you attack the knight, and black attacks the bishop. And unlike other lines, there is another line in the Scotch gambit where you move the bishop to b5 when you're attacked by the pawn. But this is a bit different because of the pawn on d4 here blocks the view of the queen on queen. So you can actually do this trade And if this pawn weren't here, there would be a potential queen trade here, which would take a lot of the fun out of the position. But in this case, we have black has this pawn here, interrupting the communication between the two queens there. So this is a nice way to play for white. So you grab the knight, black grabs the bishop. You keep taking. You grab this pawn over here. Rook to g8 is pretty much the only move. And then you throw in this check. So all these forcing moves coming with tempo. There's two ways to block the check. Maybe the main move is bishop e6. Afterwards, after which you might be tempted by knight to g5. I played that, but that's not the most accurate way to play. Actually, bishop to g5 is a little more forceful. Get another piece into the game and ask the question of the queen, what it wants to do. If the queen tries to get active, it gets into trouble here. There's this neat trick where queen d5, always keep this in mind, can be met by knight to c3, kicking the queen. So you don't want to do that. And notice that there's all these pins operating. This bishop is pinned, so the queen is not defended. This pawn is pinned, so if you take the pawn, it loses. If you take the knight, that loses the queen. So the queen has to move, knight to f5, say knight to e4, and white just really has a bunch of activity here, and black is in trouble. So you don't want to play like that. So instead of queen d5, probably the best move is bishop e7, and then takes, and king takes or queen takes. The chess engine is recommending, now it changed its mind. I think queen takes makes more sense. The chess engine at first was recommending king takes, which just looks funny. So what's the situation here? You can get your pawn back at this point, and at some time black will probably grab this pawn, so the material will be even. But really, white's position is much nicer than black's. He's safely castled. Black is going to castle queenside, so black will get to safely castle. But white's development is pretty easy at this point. The knight comes out, and he still has the advantage of this pin, and the material's even. So I think that's a decent position for white. Chess engine gives it a slight plus for white. So that's what I've seen in practice. That's with this. E4, E5. Yeah, E5 pushing on, hitting the knight, and pushing back with D5. That's with this knight f6 move. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, all my opponents have played this knight f6 move. If we go forward, there is after the check, there are two ways to block the check. One is with bishop to e6. The other way to block is with bishop to e7. That can be played right away. And you can still follow up with bishop to g5. So these actually transpose. The bishop is pinned here, so it can't take that, even though it looks like that's hanging superficially. So bishop to e6, unpinning, and you take on e7, and you get the same position. Let's see. Another question is, what happens if black tries to take on g7? This is playable too. And then bishop to f6, or bishop takes e7. Yeah, the bishop is still pinned, and you're still going to get this pawn here. So either one of those moves is playable, bishop takes or bishop to f6. Interesting and good for white. So that's my experience with this opening, and so I've been getting decent positions out of it. Now let's see what Chess Explained did. So after castles, let's go back to, so we have the context. Let's go back. So it's d4, the Scotch game, e takes d4, bishop c4, the Scotch gambit, bishop c5, the line that I didn't really cover that well, castles. And now what Chess Explained played is d6. So a very sensible move, and you can respond in. Let's see. The main response here is c3. The way to stay active, just continuing to play in gambit style. This isn't really offering another pawn because that's just a trade, but it's a way to stay a pawn down. And if black takes, which is actually not the best move, then you are pawn down, but you're playing a gambit similar to a Gehring gambit, where the one-pawn Gehring gambit, where you've got a lot of development and activity. So Black is still a couple of moves away from castling. So that's decent compensation for the pawn. So that's about an equal position. What Chess Explained played was not to take the pawn, but to play bishop g4, pinning the knight. And now there's one move here. You need to remember queen b3, just going for the counterattack and allowing black to mess up the pawn structure. So we're not worried about little things like pawn structure in this opening. We're just going for piece activity. And it took. And then, first of all, white throws in this move, bishop takes f7 check, forcing the king to f8, and then taking back the pawn. Now, the line that Chess Explained was expecting here is another line that's in the opening book, but it's not the best line. So that's the line maybe which is better for black, that Chess Explained was thinking of. So after bishop takes here, bishop takes knight, rook takes, and then pawn takes bishop. Then the move g5 that Chess Explained was talking about in the video is good. And actually, black's king, it looks a bit exposed over here, but it's relatively safe. There's now a way for this rook to get into the game. Plus, it's supporting this active pawn on g5. And white's pieces are undeveloped and somewhat cramped. So, in fact, this is a good position for black, and black has a strong advantage. So, see, the thing is, you don't have to play that way. So with white in this position after the check, king to g8, just take the bishop and don't take the knight, just leave the bishop there. Now you may lose some tempos, but let's see, that's how his opponent played. Chess Explained continued with knight f6. The chess engine here is recommending either rook to b8 or bishop to b6. I guess it's a little bit worried about this pawn. Although, as we saw in the game, taking that pawn is a bit dangerous in the Chess Explained game. So anyway, Chess Explained played knight to f6 here. It's also a reasonable move. And now bishop retreats, just gets out of trouble, doesn't want to get trapped there. And knight to h5 was played. And now queen takes b7. So this is actually where white starts to go downhill. I just wanted to identify this point because black, Chess Explained, got a good position out of the opening, and he used that to sort of justify his continued contempt for the Scotch gambit. But queen takes b7 is not a forced move. It's not a particularly good move. The chess engine recommends bringing this bishop back to e2. And just shoring up things over here on the king side. And now there is a problem that white has, that he's got to delay the development of his queen side pieces here. But this apparently is still a playable position. The line given by the chess engine is d3, bishop takes d3, and was there something better there? No, bishop takes d3, and knight to e5. Yeah, it looks good, but now looks like white is holding on. What's funny is that white is going a long way without developing these pieces, so maybe this does become a bit tricky to play. But just from the chess engine point of view, this is still rated as an even position. Anyway, so I guess what's my conclusion? Well, first of all, I'll put links to the video, both my video and Chess Explained's video, and you can form your own opinion. I guess I'm going to still continue to play the Scotch Gambit and see if we get into any of these tricky situations. I have to admit, this position is not as attractive as the other positions I looked at because of the lack of development of white. But, well, it seems to still be playable. Let's see. Wait, can we continue on a few more lines? Queen h4. I just want to get to a point where one of my pieces gets developed. Bishop e3. Finally, finally developing one of the queenside pieces. And knight to f4. Yeah, it starts to look a little bit dangerous. Bishop takes f4. Queen takes. And then let's see. Can I play queen to e6, knight to a3, queen to e6. Interesting move. Still, this knight can't develop to the natural square because of this queen. So maybe a slight edge to black in this position. Okay, so that's going to be my final word on the Scotch Gambit. I still think that it's playable, and I'm still going to continue to play it in over-the-board games. But, well, watch out for that d6 line from black. That looks like that's a pretty good line. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.